This game made Garry Kasparov a legend. It was played against Veselin Topalov in Hockey Wijk an See in 1999, starting with e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, and g6. We enter the Perk variation. Topalov, who usually plays the Sicilian, tries to be a little bit less theoretical here. And with f6 we enter a slower variation. f3 wants to protect the g4 square so that the knight from f6 can't enter through g4. b5, and now knight to g2, and knight d7, bishop h6. Takes, and bishop to b7. A better approach for black would have been a fast e5, and afterwards maybe something like a3, queen a5, and getting some pressure on the queen side. Nevertheless, he played the move bishop d7, a3, now a strong move to prevent black from playing b4 by himself, and e5 now. Now white can actually take a long castle, and after queen e7, king b1, a prophylactic move. a6, knight c1, and the idea of white is to play knight b3 and rearrange the pieces to the queen side. Now knight b3, and there's actually kind of a threat that white wants to position his knight to a5. For example, if black plays c5, white is going to play d5, and the next moves will probably going to be knight a5 followed by b4. Therefore, black took on d4, and white took back with the rook, having a very strong look on the d6 pawn. c5, rook goes back, and now knight to b6 with the idea of playing d5 immediately and having a breakthrough in the center. g3 has the idea of developing the bishop to h3 and giving a check. King b8, avoiding this check, was played by Veselin Topalov. Nevertheless, e5 would have been an interesting move. Bishop h3, king b8, takes, and knight a5 in this position. But king b8 was played by Bulgarian Grandmaster, and now knight a5 was played by Garry Kasparov. He was a little bit ambitious in this position. Nevertheless, the knight on a5 is not the best piece in this position. A better move would have been probably queen to f4, attacking furthermore the pawn on d6 as well as the knight on f6. And after king a7, probably moves such as g4, trying to play something like g5 maybe in the future. e5, takes c5, and now the queen has to decide whether to help the f6 knight or to take on c5. Knight a5 was played, bishop retreats to a8, and now bishop h3. And objectively, this position is very good for white. He has very active pieces. For example, the knight on a5 is active, the bishop has control of a long diagonal, the queen is good, the rook is good. Probably the rook from h1 is going to be positioned in the center as well. But nevertheless, black is not really worse, he just hasn't uncovered his full potential yet. d5, queen f4, and king a7. Rook develops, and after d4, Garry Kasparov got a very controversial idea in this position. He played knight d5. Now it seems like that the pawn on d5 is almost lost in this position. Nevertheless, he has a little trick he wants to play. After queen d6, a very famous combination follows, and this is entered by the move rook takes d4. rook sacrifice. Oh my god. Well, if queen takes f4, of course, we are going to take with the rook and we have a winning position because the f6 and the f7 pieces are hanging. And something like takes d4 is also not good, but it was played in the game, so we get to that later on. Nevertheless, rook d4 is more scaring than you actually think it is. It's not that great at all, because a move like king b6 is just a simple draw. This position is not better for white, it's indeed a little bit harder to play, as you have to find the best moves possible. And something like bishop takes d5 is quite a decent line. Takes on d5, knight takes back, and now giving a check, having a very interesting idea, but with perfect defense from black, there's actually nothing you can reach. With white in this position is kind of drawish, but white is the one that has to fight for the draw, not black. So actually, despite having a very decent sacrifice on d4, the position is not winning as you might think. Well, after takes d4 by Topalov, now the position is winning for white with the brilliant second rook sacrifice, rook e7. Well, if black takes, then we're simply going to take on d4, having a completely winning position. King b8, queen enters the black bases, bishop b7, knight to c6, and we're going to checkmate in the next move. And if king b8, this is also not better for black. Takes d4, knight to d7, try to hold everything together, but after takes on d5, c4, the position is also lost. Queen to e7, for example, is not worth it because of queen b6, and something like rook d7 is also not going to be successful because of queen takes h8. Black played in this position king to b6, and after queen d4, king takes a5. Well, after queen to c5, the knight on f6 is hanging, so this is not the best idea. And after a move like queen to d6, just bishop e6, another sacrifice idea. But this is very brilliant, because now, after bishop takes d5, we play b4, we secure our knight on a5, and now the position is simply winning. We even threat something like takes d5, and when black takes on f6, we're just playing rook to b7. So just make an example, something like h5, takes d5, takes f6, rook b7, checkmate. And if black takes on e6, of course, we can also play rook b7. And the third idea, checkmating, is of course queen to d4. So this position is completely winning despite being completely crazy. After queen to d4, black of course took on a5, hoping for the best, and now b4, king a4, and in this position, the best move would have been rook a7, but come on, Garry Kasparov is also just a human, so this is just a little bit better. After bishop b7, he would have taken on b7, and after queen to d5, black tries to exchange his queens or get a draw by making a perpetual, but white has the great idea of playing rook d6, and if black takes on d4, we just simply take on a6 with a checkmate. But nevertheless, even Garry Kasparov, a legend by himself, is not completely engine, God's sake, and he played queen to c3, trying to checkmate his opponent with queen to b3. Queen to d5, trying to prevent that. And now rook a7, trying from the back door to checkmate. Bishop b7, and of course we can simply take it on b7 because black cannot take back because of queen b3. By the way, in this position, queen c7 with the idea of queen a5 is not a good idea, despite black having no idea how to prevent queen a5. He can now give a perpetual, and this would be not a winning idea. So rook b7 the best idea in this move, and then queen to c4, again trying to give a choice for white, exchange or risk losing or drawing through a perpetual. Queen takes f6, and rook d1 is not going to be successful because you can exchange, but then you will have not a winning game, but actually a kind of worse, because your king on a4 is still bad and the bishop tries to checkmate, so you have to give up your rook, and afterwards you're just 2 pawns down in the endgame, so Wesley and Topalov decided not to play this line. And if rook a8, then something like queen b6, and now the same idea, queen a5, and of course queen to d4 is not a good answer to that, as we have discussed right now. Therefore, king takes a3, a last attempt, and now queen a6, king b4, and the king's chase has begun. c3, a brilliant move again in this position, having a backdoor, and if of course beside king c3 that was played, queen c3 would have been a lost move because of queen b5, king a3, and rook a7, and there's a checkmate on the a line. And king b3 of course is also not an idea because of queen a2, king c3, and now queen to b2, and you know how it's going. And there will be a checkmate quite soon. So king c3 was played, and after queen a1, king to d2, queen to b2, and king d1, brilliant idea by Garry Kasparov in this position, bishop f1, another sacrifice. Oh my god, when does it stop? Well, if black takes the bishop, this would be losing because of queen c2, the king has to go to e1, and now rook e7 from the back, and black's only defense is queen to e2, and we can simply take on e2, checkmate. So you cannot take the bishop on f1 in this position, and you still have to defend e2 after all, so rook d2 the best idea to prevent these ideas. Rook d7, the next sacrifice. I can't even count anymore how many sacrifices Garry Kasparov has done. You can't take on d7 because of takes c4, and right now white wants to checkmate his opponent with queen c1, that's the idea, so black cannot take on black cannot play a very nice move. He has to take on c4, and then white can take the rook on h8, and of course queen against rook is completely winning for white, and therefore he just played a few more moves, rook d8, queen a8, c3, queen a4, but it was shortly losing after f4, f5, king c1, rook d2, and after queen a7, black gave the game up. After a beautiful presentation of Garry Kasparov, Wesley Topalov had no choice than acknowledge the genius of his opponent. Therefore, do you think Garry Kasparov is a legend, in your opinion? Write it down in the comments, and if you have watched till this moment in the video, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.